communicate.
There are thousands of messaging apps out there,
Yeah.
and there are, I think, 4 or 5 apps winning. Right? They have what 85 to 90% of all the traffic are 5 apps globally, and there are thousands, 10,000s of apps. Right?
So we got enough.
So if you add another 10,001 app, right, you're not gonna catch kind of any attention to it. Right? It's not gonna happen.
So let's take some questions. I like questions. What do you guys got? Hey everybody, we're back with another Maker Zone. We talk about fintech, innovation, and finance. I'm here today and honored to be together with Patrick Barnard. He looks rather quiet, but actually his company, Qumram, we'll put the logo here, landed 4 million in seed funding last year in Switzerland, which is a new record in fintech. And what Patrick's team are doing is really around RegTech, which we haven't covered yet, and it's a massive white space for the finance area. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you all, and pleasure to be here with you guys here in the UBS lab. Definitely exciting to see that. Normally, I'm used kind of to other meetings, a little bit more stiffy than this one.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to be here. So like you said, right, Qumram, one of the leaders in the RegTech space. We're in the market since 2011. That's when we started with the idea, and then 2013 we launched the product, and since then we gathered a lot of interest, especially in the Swiss financial service market, but also in Europe, UK. And started last year in the US and have gained some really good traction in the US too. And
it's been amazing to watch the growth. I mean, we just learned all about the business model. We did a session beforehand. Can we explain what RegTech is? So, I mean, from my high-level perspective, right, there's financial technology, which already loses half of our audience, right? So fintech is a major industry. I heard, thanks to Oliver Bussmann, to your newsletter, I heard that there was a 17 billion investment already, or we're on track for that this year in fintech. So that's a big space. And within that, there's all these different segments, right? So there's InsurTech, which is about insurance and a new generation of that. There's Wealth Tech, which is more my industry, our industry, and wealth management. There's RegTech, which is regulatory tech. Can you talk about where that came from and where it's headed?
yeah, regulatory technology is definitely a need. If you look to the situation, not only financial services is in, but mostly financial services, right? But also other regulatory industries. If you look these days, right, it's an ever increasing regulations out there, right? It's MiFID 17,000 pages, right?
What's MiFID?
MiFID is the new market regulations for financial services in Europe. It's going to come out 2018, which is all about protecting the investor, right, and regulating kind of the wealth and investment kind of market.
So this new regulation has 17,000
pages to read, right? And
wow.
Not only to read, right? You need to understand it, right? Do the interpretation of it, right? Understand what it means for you as a financial service organization. Paint out the processes, right? And the change of your business model, your business processes, right? Put that in place, right? And then start to track that, right? So you can imagine that the 17,000 pages are generating, right, roughly 17 million to 170 million additionally pages, right, of new process design, new business model, new risk analytics, right, and all these things. So today, right,
I can't imagine how many millions of hours of meetings have gone into this.
Millions of hours of meetings, right? Lawyers, auditors, right? An entire industry is living out of that,
Wow.
and trying to find its way. And the costs are exploding in compliance. That's one thing, right? And the other one, in compliance, it becomes more and more. Compliance becomes personal, right? Because it's personal liability for the top management, for executive. Within a financial service organization, it's a question sometimes about going to jail, right? So how you want to handle that? In the past, right, compliance been throwing additional resources, right, to it. That's why your compliance department grew significantly where other departments shrank, right? This happens across financial services, but it's not sufficient anymore, right? New heads, new people working on it is not sufficient to go
Can't
after
keep up
it.
with the pile
Can't
of paper.
keep up with it. So you need to find technology, and that's what RegTech is finding ways, right, to optimize, right, the adoption of new regulations, right, to become agile in the organization, to be to be able to comply with these new regulations.
That was awesome, by the way, that was an awesome definition of RegTech. Susanna Kishti, Nicole Anderson, and the rest of the community in London, please record that. I think it's great promotion for the focus that's coming on RegTech. Can you talk about the subspecies of RegTech? I mean, you talked with us before about compliance, about fraud prevention, about actually adding value in financial services. So not just reading the regulations and applying them, but actually finding new value propositions in it. What's that about? How do you do that?
The big trend which we're seeing within RegTech is really leverage data. It's not only RegTech, but in RegTech, I mean, that's the goal at the end, right? Is leveraging data, right, and to get smarter around the regulations and to use that data, right, to optimize your business processes and the way you do business and automate. At the end, it's all about automating, right, what's coming out through the regulations. And we are a big believer that that data shouldn't be just used for compliance reasons, right? Why? Because compliance has a limited value, right? Compliance is often to protect a certain group, right? It can be the consumer, it can be the investor, it can be the government, the society, it can be multiple things, which the idea of a regulation is, right? We believe that that data is so rich, right, that you can use that for other things. So our customers are often using it also for fraud detection and prevention.
But without names, give us an example of how you can do this.
Yeah, it's right. There's the internal fraud happening, which is almost half of it happening, and there's external fraud, right? We have use cases for both. But let me give you the external fraud one because it's a perfect situation. It's an insurance customer of ours, which was using our tool to record all their online submission, right, to buy a car insurance, and they were convinced that there is no fraud happening, or they detected all the fraud they think kind of happening online, and then with our solution they were able to detect 5% additionally fraud happening online, which they weren't aware of it. And this is simple. It's customers applying for a car insurance. They had a travel ban on their driving license, and that right, led them at the end to be declined to buy a car insurance. What these customers were doing, they went back, changed their data, were giving false information, right? And some of them even checked the T's and C's. What is if I give wrong information, right? They were fully aware what they were doing, right? And then they closed the car insurance and bought one online. So maybe we can detect that
maybe
wrong
at this
behavior.
point it makes sense to explain what Qumram is doing, because we didn't say that so far.
Okay, it's good fair point, Joshi. We're recording every digital interaction happening on web, mobile apps, or social media. So we can, right, if someone comes on UBS as a platform, either on your website or your online banking or in your wealth management client portal, right, then we can record his entire session. Means, right, we see exactly where he clicks, how he moves his mouse, what his key strokes are, and so on. And we do that because compliance is requesting it, right? The regulators are asking you to record your customers. So if you have a personal meeting, right, everyone is used to that Beratungsprotokoll in German or that client advisory protocol. If you're calling a bank, right, the first thing you hear is that nice voice which says your call is being recorded, right? And these days on the digital channels, right, it becomes more and more the way how business is done. I know in wealth is not yet too much digital, but it's growing rapidly compared to all the other channels, right? So you have an obligation to record what have we communicated, to whom, when, have we informed him about the risk, was the product well explained and clarified and so on, was it suitable and appropriate for the clients and all of that. And we're just a solution, or we're just a service in the background which is recording all these transactions, and with that we're recording the customer behavior.
So for those who aren't from finance who are listening to this, and most of our listeners are on the podcast so they aren't seeing the visual, it's like a surveillance system. So basically the regulations are requiring us as a bank and other financial providers to record basically every interaction, which means if you pick up the phone, if you're on the web, if you're on your smartphone interacting with the bank and it's e-banking or wherever you are on their website, any interaction has to be recorded.
Yeah.
And my take on this is we can't keep up with the volume, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have found an innovative way
to fully
do that.
automate that, fully automate also the takeaway, right, out of it, the analytical piece. Where do people struggle? Where is risk? Where is fraud, right? Where is space to improve the entire customer experience? Right, we fully automated that, not only the recording but also the analysis out of it. Yeah.
And the growth of this is pretty big, right? I mean,
It's pretty big, right? Because all market trends are working in our favor, right? More and more is happening digital, more and more regulations. You put that together, right? It's the perfect storm for our solution. So,
right. So what frustrates me and what we talked about earlier was, first of all, this path, and maybe you can grab this as footage later, but I'm going to stand up. This, what I call the path to stupidity, right? So you've got e-banking channels and channels that we capture. So anything done on a telephone, which is, the business is based around 1970s. We assume that people are at their desk using a telephone that we have sleuthed, right? Which isn't most of the traffic today due to this.
Yeah.
But assuming that channel is monitored fully, so you're on a company telephone or you're on the company e-channel with an employee, I think that's not the majority of our activity. The majority of our activity is over other channels, native channels, which the client is actually using, right? WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn Direct Messenger, Twitter Direct Messenger. And this is where I see the problem. And that's where I'm kind of interested in your strategy, because what we talked about before was, if you allow that stuff for business, then you have the obligation to record it and retain it for 5 to 7 years, which means you're in the data storage business as a bank. Then you have to monitor it. So you have an obligation to monitor it. So if there was illegal activity, you should have sniffed it or at least had controls in place to sniff it, which means it leads to incidents. Yeah. You're going to find stuff, right? And if you find stuff, you need resources, which means many more lawyers and people working on those problems, which leads to the conclusion, block this stuff. Yeah. Block all channels from, even that the client is using with the potential advisor.
Block and compromise the user experience. So to mitigate the risks, you say, okay, our user experience will be only by phone or by mail, and that's it. Yeah.
So that for me is one of the places where we've landed in the banking and finance industry that has a real issue around it, because you can't block activity inbound from clients, can you?
100% with everything what you said. This is what we're seeing mostly in the market, right? So how is the market dealing with it? One way, which you mentioned in fewer kind of videos online, which I saw and came to you, is people or banks or financial institutions are trying to build their own social platform, right? And then try to attract the people to come. Never gonna work. Right? Have 1 billion active users on WhatsApp as an example, right? Using WhatsApp at least in average 25 times a day, right? Spending hours, right? But in average 25 times a day. If I'm looking to my son, right, from Friday lunchtime to Monday morning, and he's 12 years old, right, and he's going to a school with 28 colleagues, right? They have more than 1,000 messages within that group over 2.5 days, right? This is the way how people communicate these days. So now these financial institutions are trying to bring these people on their own social platform. Never gonna work. So this is why we came up and we said,
I have to say, pause there. I completely agree with this, and I said this on a stage in London recently. Any bank trying to replicate WhatsApp, Facebook Direct Messenger, Twitter Direct, don't. You're just going to waste your time, because you can't get clients to download new apps to communicate with you, because they've already got enough apps to communicate.
There are thousands of messaging apps out there,
yeah.
And there are, I think, 4 or 5 apps winning, right? They have, 85 to 90% of all the traffic are 5 apps globally. And there are thousands, 10,000s of apps, right?
So we got enough.
So if you add another, right, 10,001 app, right, you're not going to catch kind of any attention to it, right? It's not going to happen.
Even the one that are somewhat successful at creating new messaging platform like Tinder, what happened is that after a first interaction, they say, okay, let's switch to WhatsApp or to...
People switch channels back to Facebook, Direct Messenger, wherever they happen to be. So my problem as a banker and an innovation guy in a bank is, first we have to stop that. So we're not going to launch new apps that try to replace other messengers. People use their native messengers, but then we're stuck with this, right? We can't fix the regulatory issue, which is record everything you do
And
in native
again,
apps.
and I agree. This is what we're seeing it actively with kind of our prospect base or within the industry we're going. When we're talking to the compliance officer, it's exactly what you've been saying. Oh, I can't record it, and then we show them how we do it, right? We can really record your conversation, one-to-one conversation on LinkedIn, or how a trader would use WhatsApp on the desktop, right, to communicate with his customer, as an example. On
But
WhatsApp,
slow this
right?
down a bit, because my mom watches this. Hi, Mom. Explain to my mom, basically, what we're talking about. So if you're trying to monitor a client advisor doing outbound chat over his web browser, which is his bank PC,
Yeah.
what does that, how does that work?
How did that? Okay, at the end, it's simple, right? If the employee of the bank, right, which based on the regulations which we were talking about, like MiFID and other ones, needs to be monitored and surveillance going on, right? So what we're doing is the moment he opens LinkedIn on his browser, right? We are part of the internal network at the financial institution, and we start monitoring him, right? We start the surveillance kind of his session. Means that when he opens LinkedIn and he starts the communication with you as the end customer, right? Then he gets a warning that he's being recorded, so that he's aware of that, right? And then he can start communicating with you, and we're recording it. Just think about being a video camera on top of your shoulder and exactly seeing what you see on the screen, right? This is what we're recording. We're recording his screen.
It's happened in every industry, hasn't it?
It's happening
There's
on every
dash
industry.
cameras on every police cruiser. Some policemen have a camera
Yeah.
on their body,
Yeah.
right? And doctors in the operating room,
Yeah.
everything's recorded. So
And
we're in the same place as other
We're on the
industries.
same place, right? We just do it smarter instead of videos, which would explode kind of the data size, right? We do it really on a smart technology. We're not recording video. We're really using kind of the original data to store them at a really small footprint. But the experience to consume that is like a video. It's right. We can replay it. So.
Can we
so
pause
this
there
is-
for a minute? For those listening who are experts on data, information technology and stuff, what he just said is what Patrick just said is a big part of the value proposition. So shrinking the data is important because imagine now we record every telephone call, email conversation, and any social media traffic from a bank PC with a client or a prospect. You're talking terabytes of data being recorded, and server time costs a lot of money. And we as a bank are going to insist that we retain all that data. So we can't put it out in California. It's got to be in our server farm in our country, which means it's inside our firewalls and protected, which means it's super expensive. So how do you crush down this data and make things actually,
It
usable?
starts with the recording, right? The way how we record it is so innovative, right? That we record it really at a small footprint, right? And then we compress that data. We put single instance archiving, means, right, if the image from Georgie, myself, and you is the same kind of displayed, then we store it once and we reference it, right? So we really reduce the footprint to less than a tenth of its original size, which is never seen in the market, something like that. So right, it starts really from the get-go. How can you reduce the data from the recording side, right? And
But there's still this big unsolved issue, isn't there?
Yeah.
So in terms of clients working in the e-channels of a bank or an insurance company, you've got that nailed.
yeah,
In terms of outbound traffic and social media channels like direct messengers, where they do it from their work personal computer, you've got it covered. But these things, this is where most people I know spend all their time, right? And if a client on a Friday night writes you and says, hey, how are whatever doing, you shouldn't answer, right? And yet, how can you monitor that as a banker?
at the moment,
This is the
right,
problem,
the
right?
the technical limitation at the moment is you can answer it by using a browser and connecting through the browser, WhatsApp or LinkedIn and so on to do it, and then you're
Even on these?
monitored. That would even go on these, absolutely. But the moment, and this is where you're going, right? You don't want to lose on the experience of the app, right? You want to continue to use Twitter app, or you want to continue to use LinkedIn app or the WhatsApp app. Right? there's no technical way to do it today a proper way, right? Either you need to hack the app or you need to jailbreak the system, right? None of that is compliant these days. That's the only way you do it. Or you create another app, right? Which is kind of a shell around these apps, right? And it becomes your super communication tool, it becomes your own app, right? Which every client advisor would need to install that app, right? And that's something which we're looking into it, which potentially could work in the future. But at the moment,
I think that may be needed as a bridge solution.
That's
because there's no way to invade these native applications. Is there like you can't go changing the code in Twitter?
Yeah. There's no way exactly. You can't really connect to these apps from that standpoint.
Do we see any other solutions coming? Or I mean, this is the state of the industry right now in RegTech is monitoring.
I see this as the only solution. Either you have a layer that sits on top of every app and it's had to monitor, or you have an app that just acts as like sync. It syncs and check if everything is compliant. Or you use the browser, like web WhatsApp, Telegram, and WeChat from your browser. We were discussing there's no way to monitor Snapchat unless you wear a helmet with a camera.
Because there's no web version of Snapchat.
Yeah.
So I know that this sounds pretty technical. Are we at 20? But you have to see that. I mean, you guys are industry leading, and I think you've got a great company going and a great value proposition, and it still isn't enough actually. And it's not to insult it, but you've gone as far as technology will allow us to go, and there's a lot more to go.
Right? There's a lot to go, especially.
The battle will never be finished because you can always meet in person behind in a dark room and discuss.
Of course, but the digital world makes things so easy that we have to monitor it.
Right. Our solution is not. Right, to find the one with criminal energy, because the one with criminal energy, this is what you're saying, right? They always gonna find a way, right, to pass kind of the surveillance tool of a financial institution. Most of our tools are used to prove innocence, right? To show, we informed the customer about the risk. The customer or the employee which had access, right, to the customer and communicated to the customer was doing it the right way.
And provide a better client experience.
Today, exactly, and provide a better client experience. Today, right, often the financial institution can't put the proofs on the table, right, and then there's someone which, is guilty because you can't provide the proofs, even if he behaved the right way, right? So for us, our tool is not really used to go and kind of find the bad guys, right? It's done too, but at the end it's very much to prove that we've been working the right way, the proper way, the compliant way, right? And be able to have the proofs around that.
Which is a good positive story around supporting financial institutions to survive through this mountain of regulation.
This is right.
And keep costs in control.
This is why RegTech comes up, right? RegTech, in FinTech you have these companies which are trying to go after the financial service market and go after UBS as a competitor, right? RegTech is here, right, to help not only the mature players, right, the incumbent leaders, right, like UBS and the large institution in the market. It's also here to help the fintech companies, right, to comply with the rules. They go at the moment very often as pirates.
They don't have 1,500 lawyers.
They can't afford it. They can't afford it. So, right, I had a conversation with an interesting challenger bank in Munich, right? They said, hey, if BaFin knocks on our door, we're proud, right? Because then we had an impact to the industry.
Right.
And today we don't care about compliance, right? Because we're not big enough to matter to them. So for them it's all about, hey, if we get to the point that we get their attention, cool. And then we're gonna address
a couple small definitions. Munich is a city in southern Germany. I'm kidding. BaFin is the German regulator, and a challenger bank are the up-and-coming banks who are very small, and they're challenging the incumbent banks to take away market share. But I agree with the definitions that you've given today. You're a super good spokesperson for RegTech. So I really appreciate. Is there any call that you would want people to look at in 2017 in terms of improving their business around this mountain of regulation that you described?
Yeah, especially around RegTech, it's a new wave coming, right? You've seen late 2016, beginning of 2017, RegTech popping up as a new term. and people not really getting what is it and for whom is it and so on. And I see, especially in compliance, right, they get the rec side, they're missing the tech side, right? So I can only advise anyone in compliance, right, start digging into technology, because the future in compliance, right, is technology, as in other areas too, right? So
Very good
my
advice.
call out there is not only for the compliance departments within the financial institution, right? Get close to technology. Technology is a friend and is not an enemy, right? Technology is here to help, and it's not gonna take your jobs away. Right? It's gonna automate all these stupid works which you need to do, and then you have more time to really change the culture and the behavior of an organization, working more strategically instead of, right, filling out forms again and again and again. That's where technology comes in, and it's going to be your friend and not your enemy. And the next call is, right, to the regulators. We need to rethink, right, regulations, right? Why putting words on paper, defining regulations, right? Having auditors and lawyers trying to make sense out of it, right? Having all these financial institutions going out and trying to implement that, right? And then other auditors coming in, right, testing or testifying if it was done properly, right, and then the regulators coming in and trying to figure out if it was done properly, and then tracking it again, and then it starts all over again. Why can't we just put out services out there? A central KYC, AML service provided by the European financial regulation, and every financial institution can consume that service, right?
That'd be interesting.
It will be easier, it will be cheaper, right? Who wins? Me, myself, as a customer of the bank, I'm winning because I don't need to pay the fees which the banks now need to put in place with their operations.
To cover their compliance operations.
Everyone would benefit out of it, right?
Two very
and
sensible calls to action from Patrick Barnard. Very powerful words around RegTech. I didn't know you would go this deep today. That's awesome stuff.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks.
Thank
It
you
was
so
great
much.
to be here, and I didn't know that it's going to turn out to a video. So
Well, there you go.
Thanks.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it and took value from it. If you did, please like and share it. What I'm trying to do is open up the community of innovation together with fintech and the banking industry. I think we're all trying to do the same thing and at great speed. And I really get enjoyment out of the interaction with you. So if you could leave a couple of comments and recommend the articles and the episodes that we're doing to your friends, it would be much, much appreciated. Thanks for watching.
So let's take some questions. I like questions. What do you guys got?